So, first of all, thank you all. I think a very nice sort of diversity of perspectives and disciplines that we all bring, and I think you get a sense of the richness as an academic and professional challenge of working in this area. So, one of the topics I wanted to bring up, since this is a panel about resiliency, is this idea of distributed versus centralized intelligence. And one of the vulnerabilities that we create is there are many more endpoints on the system that can be potentially hacked into. When you start putting distributed sensors and particularly controls on field assets that are unpersoned, unstaffed, where do you each sort of see that balance? What is, from a design perspective, from a scientific perspective, the cost and benefit of putting more intelligence in a centralized system versus creating these intelligent distributed nodes on our networks? Mark, maybe do you want to kick us off?
Yes. When the networks we are operating are widely deployed and on the field, and in the development of telecommunication has made it possible today to monitor, to have some kind of centralized and global control. But due to the past, we have developed autonomous and independent local intelligence and local control systems over the pumping station, over the chlorination station. And by design, our network has been developed with local intelligence. And this is something we will keep in the future, despite that we now have the ability to have an overview and a global control system, because it really gives us this reliability and resilience. Because if something goes wrong, globally, all the different components will continue to work with a basic normal behavior. It may not be optimal, but it will keep working. So the choice, the solution for us is clearly to have a two-stage system with local basic intelligence for day-to-day operation and a more global optimized control system.
Yeah, I think there's some similarities between water and electricity in that, the traditional electromechanical grid systems are, switched locally without a lot of central intelligence down at the distribution level. We talked before about how the bulk transmission high voltage network on electric systems has a lot of intelligence, has a central brain, which is typically a utility software called the energy management system.
Yeah.
Maybe, Greg, some comments from a design perspective.
Yeah,
the whole question of the human-machine interface and how humans can deal with this flood of data that's coming in from distributed sensing.
Yeah. Well, water and electricity are similar, but they shouldn't be mixed. That I know. And
a very good point.
And to your question,
your safety message for today.
Yes. Yeah. Your question about the layers of control is interesting to me. Resilience, from our perspective, comes from the social fabric. So, if in a crisis the social fabric in a community is not already established, that community will be far more impacted than a community, far less impacted. So, if there is no social fabric, there is far more impact than if there's a lot of social fabric established. And so that we can articulate that in terms of flexibility. In other words, by the time there is a problem and you try to find out where the power substation is, where the gas main is, and you don't know, this is a huge issue. This is not a good time to figure things out. So it's much better to prepare both the level of information and the level of social fabric before any crisis hits. On the other hand, on the global level, of course, there's infrastructural concerns that are much more complex. And the key question for us is how to integrate the social fabric with the infrastructural level. That's the main point. How can we design so that the individual sees himself or herself in the larger structure? Because we have a city here with 10 million people, or Bay Area, right? And how do you know that your individual action has some kind of impact on whether the city will flood or not? And especially once it floods, how do you behave and how does that play out? That seeing yourself in that collective is a very important aesthetic issue that we haven't solved very well yet. And so that requires a lot more attention.
Yeah, if we think about the damage that's caused by some of the recent natural disasters, there's a huge both cultural and kind of societal framework around that. Haiti, the earthquake in Haiti and Mexico City had tremendous physical damage, in part because the building codes are poor. A lot of the and a lot of buildings didn't follow code, and so you had physical damage, but you also had cultural networks that weren't as robust, and people weren't able to seek shelter or get aid from neighbors the way they do in many developed countries. So.
Yeah.
Bérangère?
So I completely support the notion of distributing sensors, because we believe localized information, just central information, are not enough to control a network. So that's basically our idea. But what we believe is that a 2,000 euro sensors is way too expensive for massive distribution. So we're trying to decrease the cost of sensors by using low-cost technologies, by using plastic substrates, for instance, instead of a regular microelectronics standard. So we definitely do believe in this massive distribution of sensors, so that if one of your sensors fail, you have thousands over at some other places. So there will be technical problems, and there will be a massive amount of data to sort. So that might be very difficult to interpret. So what we're also trying to do is to put localized intelligence, localized smartness within the devices themselves, so that not every information goes back to the manager, but just part of the information. So, of course, it depends on your sensors, and what your sensors will be able to do depends on how expensive you want these sensors. But as a matter of example, if you may just want to alert your manager if your pollution level is high, so you may measure every minute, but you may send only an information if there is a crisis. So there are lots of options. And
just make sure you don't blink 888 in between.
Yes,
that was a good lesson. I hadn't heard that before. So, and I should mention, we have a project looking at distributed energy resource management. So all of the photovoltaics and distributed storage systems today are invisible on customer sites, are invisible largely to the utility. And we've created a distributed control architecture where those individual devices publish and subscribe data to a database in the cloud that the utility can also publish and subscribe to. And it's exactly what you're describing, that the utility may not care at every point in time what the photovoltaic system on a roof in Berkeley is doing, but in an event scenario or when there's congestion on the network and they're concerned about accurately measuring the voltage flow or the current flows or the voltage level on that circuit, they will have visibility that says, yes, there is cloud cover and I'm not getting that PV right now. And by the way, it's forecast to clear up and reappear at 3 o'clock this afternoon. So that level of visibility that they don't have today comes from the distributed network. I want to distinguish quickly, since we're talking about resiliency, between security and privacy, which I think are two notions that sometimes get conflated. In the electric industry, we have, with smart grid, as Don was saying, some very large deployments of smart metering and endpoint intelligence. Consumers are perhaps rightly concerned about the ability to hack into that network and see an individual's consumption. For those who aren't familiar with the issues, if you have data on when someone uses electricity, you know when they're home. Burglars can use that to target an attack. All kinds of information about a consumer can be misused in all kinds of ways. That's a different issue, though, from the typical cybersecurity concern, which is, the provision of bulk electricity and the ability of an attacker to take control of the grid, maybe shut down major equipment. So we have different levels of security and acceptance of risk for different kinds of assets. Tell me how that plays out, because I think when we put out these distributed sensor and control networks, we're really exposing new kinds of assets to new kinds of deliberate attack, differentiated from catastrophic events or unexpected weather events.
Yeah.
So we're in the land of probability here.
Yeah.
How likely is it for a certain event to occur, right? Your burglar grabbing your data, the examples you mentioned. And in that context, the more a consumer knows, the more likely they are to identify an unusual situation. So, more education and more awareness would lead to more resilience, I think.
It's like the Homeland Security system. Despite the color-coded warnings we used to get and all of the, what they call security theater, all of the guards with guns and, X-ray machines in the airport, most attacks that have been foiled by the traveling public spotting something suspicious.
Yeah, so security is a bottom-up production. It's something that happens on the ground, and I trust my neighbors a lot more than somebody who's really remote and maybe sitting looking at my neighborhood from a satellite perspective or something. But we need to make that the ethnographic level of this experience transparent to the infrastructural level.
As a French representative, I'm not sure my answer would be the same. I'm not sure I trust my neighbor more than a system to...
move to the United States. It'll be fun.
Maybe. But I may be biased. So anyway, I think the probability is one that someone will get hurt by this kind of system, that this system will be used to access data you don't want to get published, so to get known by some other people. So I've heard about people developing strategies to refuse to make the detailed measurement. So there was this startup presentation, so data aggregation. So you don't measure the data. Your individual sensor may measure it, but the data you actually calculate, you choose not to analyze the data in a sense that can be damaging to people. And I think that's important to keep in mind when you're developing hardware and software solutions, that you take care not to turn to big brother society. I think that's, for me, it's the biggest risk, that we can know everything about what people are doing, and that shouldn't be known. So I'd say let's keep it in mind, and you may not need to track the time of use of your washing machine, or I don't know, this kind of stuff. You need to think about what should be known and not. And the consumer may not have the right idea in this, I think. We've been talking a lot about the consumer should be at the center, but the majority is not always right, and regulation are good. I'm a French representative, and I think regulation can protect.
It's okay, you're in Berkeley, you're safe here.
Sorry, but so my point of view, we need regulation for this kind of problem.
I think it's a great point. I think there's an educational evolution that comes with any new technology, and I think what we're really seeing is that consumers, to the extent they fear aspects of smart grid, or they don't support it because they don't see the value proposition, it hasn't been around long enough, and people don't have experience with it, positive or negative, and so there's a natural tendency to sort of fear the unknown. It'll be interesting 4 years, 5 years, 10 years into the smart meter deployments, how consumers will actually end up using that data. I think we'll also see some positive, unexpected developments of application development and new technologies that come along to ride on top of all of this platform we're creating. Maybe, as a last thought from the panel, and then just open it up to questions from the audience, but, what do you see emerging that you're excited about? What are some of the positive technology trends? Mark? What's new in water?
What's new in water? Lots of things. The sensor area is really moving forward quickly with, as it was mentioned, an issue which is reducing the cost of the sensors. The other major aspect and the most exciting, I feel, is everything related to data mining and data analytics. Yesterday was some presentation from the startups. It was not related to water, but we can adapt this to water, with people presenting a box to analyze the consumption, detect the different kind of devices which were working or not on the electrical network. We have similar work for the water, like with detecting contamination, detecting failure, analyzing, forecasting water consumption. And really, this is a very active field and one of the most promising, I feel.
Okay, great.
I think that's fascinating. I want to hear more about that. And I have to say that the most positive developments come from Web 2.0 or gratitude, transparency, and engagement. It is surprising and remarkable how we expected people to use Web 2.0 for all sorts of nefarious purposes, but by and large, people feel grateful that they get more control over whom they communicate with in which way. They feel grateful about being able to participate. They respond with responsibility and civility to the feeling of receiving a power. So, and this is not electrical power, but power to control information. And so they use it by and large responsibly. And so there's a new sort of internet citizenship that is emerging that I'm very happy about, where people actually can be trusted to use the data about themselves and about others in a responsible manner. And so that is a new trend that turned out much better than we expected, and we can build on that some more.
So I'm enthusiastic about the fact that people are not only thinking about money, but about sustainability, and it's beginning to be a true meaning. So we are getting a little bit ready to do better than what we used to, and I think that's a great trend that I'd like. That I wish to see continue.
Yeah.
That's amazing and surprising too. So that's
Great.
beautiful.
Let's throw it open. Any questions from the audience? For anybody on the panel?
Hi, Sandra Bach from AutoGrid. I
Hi,
have two
Sandra.
questions. The first one is for Greg. I was curious about what methodology that you used. By the way, I loved your presentation. It was hilarious. But just the size of the statistical sample and what types of people that you were asking, residents, probably not utility folks.
It was on the last slide, but it was obscured by the forwarding button, so I'm sorry you didn't get that. It was a sample of 25 participants, and they were all from Mechanical Turk, so they're anonymous, probably doing this work at 2 a.m. You know what Mechanical Turk is? It's Amazon's crowdsourcing workforce. So you can send these tasks out to people to rate something in terms of their interest in this case, and it's a broad group of internet users around the world. So it's a global community of I don't know if they're male or female, but typically they're younger, and typically they're distributed across the globe according to network penetration.
It reminds me of the old joke that all of the psychological literature is only applicable to college sophomores because basically most psychology experiments are recruited from the professor's classroom. So.
Yeah, so there's some sample bias there, but it is an international community.
Great, and that trust question plays into the second, which is when we bring up security, it kind of opens up this Pandora's box of paranoia. Do y'all feel like releasing more information about security would make people more paranoid or maybe more calloused, as with TSA's warnings, or would it actually make the grid safer?
Obviously, let's talk about it. And the moment we talk about things, this is the moment where we build trust. If we are being talked to, then we build anxiety. TSA is the case where we are being talked to. We are the subject of a state apparatus of authority, and so we're not really considered as active participants in our own security. So if we have a conversation that goes two ways, especially with infrastructural situations like utility companies, suddenly we see our own agency, we see our own responsibility, and then the question is not one of just security, it's one of constructing the kind of world we'd like to live in. And that's how I would cast that question. What can we as users do to construct the world we want to live in? And how can we realize that responsibility?
Actually, Sandra, it occurs to me you may have sort of done a better job than I did of differentiating. I think the privacy concerns that consumers have, the data sort of belongs to me and I want to know who's looking at it when, maybe that's an area where more information provides that level of comfort. Okay, if I've provided, if I've authorized access to someone to look at my data, I feel more comfortable knowing, what they're seeing. I think that the infrastructure security questions, like real airport security, like real cybersecurity, the less said, the better. Telling the Russian mafia what brand of elliptical encryption we use on SCADA data on utility hardware is a really bad idea. And
well, can you say more about that?
I don't know enough to be dangerous, fortunately. Okay, I think we're out of time. So, one more? Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, good morning. Sergio Altamonte from University of Nottingham, but based here in Berkeley. I just want to ask, I'm very much fascinated about the possibility of having information, tracking data, and releasing it back. But my worry is, from an occupant's perspective, where do we draw the line? We are bombarded with information, and I think that trust comes with understanding. Traffic light has 3 inputs, red, yellow, and green, and even the socket, you either put it in or put it out. Some time ago, I was explaining to my mom the different programs in the washing machine and the time of the day where she should have made the washing and something like that. Uh-huh. And she told me, back in the days, I didn't need a degree in quantum physics to wash your clothes. So I'm just wondering, who is really the target? And who is meant to be using all that information? Because if we release all that information to the consumer at the end, we may get the reverse effect, so sort of refusal, enough. Well, like we have with the electric bill, with all the numbers and things.
We got to be very open-minded. I'd like to contrast the Nest to the power meter, the smart meter. The Nest is a device that replaces your thermostat in your house, and it's made to look like an Apple product. It's very, very cute. And people feel that they're measuring their own life, right? Oh, I'm taking my pulse. Okay, this is very interesting. Now I'm taking your pulse. You're like, wait a minute, what's this guy doing? This is getting kind of weird. So because I'm measuring you, you don't like it. Because I measure myself, I do like it. So we have to start with that kind of agency and think about how can your mother and every other user become aware of what they're doing and pace their own level of adoption. If we tell them this is what you need to do now, they're not going to like it. If we give them a chance, oh, you can measure this now. Really, I can measure this now? Okay, good, I'm going to try it out. So we have to let the consumers drive these kinds of experiences and allow for some diversity, which is very difficult because really the topology of the user is highly dynamic. The topology of the power grid is not very dynamic. It's very static. You don't build a new power line every 5 minutes. But the user has a new way of thinking about things every 5 minutes. And so these two things need to, we need to let the user play a little bit more and I think, and discover things more. Discovery, curiosity, gratitude, those are the feelings we want to address.
Yeah.
May I
Yeah,
answer to
you want
that?
a last one?
I'm puzzled because it's very, very nice to think the user may choose what he wants to, the level of information he wants to know. But do we really have a choice? When we install a new software, you get, you'll get automatically connected to Facebook, and this software is automatically gonna check your email on Gmail, even if you don't want to give access to your email because it's the automatic option. So on a theoretical basis, I say it should work like this, but are the company really doing this? And I'm not sure they really give us a choice on this one, except maybe for the really well-educated people who can, okay, I know this cross shouldn't be crossed, I should remove it. So I'm not sure we really have a choice in this one. So that's...
Yeah, I would say, to Greg's point earlier about Web 2.0, that, the jury is still out. I think the social media trust level, I trust a lot of stuff. I mean, Google sucks information out of my Gmail account all the time. And I sort of am okay with that because I sort of trust Google. But, it doesn't take very much, right? And Facebook is even less trusted and keeps doing things to lose trust with the public. I think that it's a matter of time before sort of public trust erodes in, and public trust is already low in utilities, so we don't have a lot of room to play with, sharing energy data in new and creative ways before consumers will lose their faith in us.
Yeah. But on the other side, you have to bring the understanding of the people at the right level and to give the proper education for them to understand the data you are disclosing. Because typically all the data that we gather regarding the functioning of our water networks we have designed the system to help us do our jobs. The municipalities ask us to disclose the information to them, and we give it, but we know that they can understand it. We can spend some time explaining them and explaining to a few technical people within the municipalities, and they can understand it. And now we are talking open data and discussing which data should we disclose or not. And we are very worried, and the municipalities also. How would the people understand, interpret the data, and what my chlorine level is lower than the chlorine level in the next street? Why is it so? I want to have a higher or lower because I don't like the taste of it. And so we have to be. This is a matter of discussion still for us.
Unintended consequences. Good. I think
Okay, we have to
we're wrapping
stop
up.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Let's thank the panel, please.